over our agenda. As you've all been playing along, we had a chance to do a little welcome here. And Nicole, if you'd like to walk us through the rest of the agenda.
Sure. The first thing on our agenda is going to be Dr. Rob, and he's going to give a little bit of information about containers, how to use them, and make those make your life a little easier. Next, Jen and Brad will be covering some new features on Tableau. In our breakout sessions, we will have tips and tricks from Brad and Jen, cloud migration from Dr. Rob, and then desktop versus web edit with Sarah W. And then finally, we've got Tableau Doctor with Sarah L. And again, I know some of you may have just joined us. Please send a chat to either myself, Nicole Kraft, or Sarah Legates to let us know if you're interested in using the Tableau Doctor session, so we can kind of have a gauge as to how many people will be involved. And then we'll have the wrap up, giving just to kind of wrap up the meeting, and then we'll do the e-learning giveaway, and then we'll transition to the final breakouts.
Yep.
Okay,
and now talk a little bit more.
Oh. Yeah. So if you're not familiar with the e-learning, what it is, it's a new training tool from Tableau, and it's basically a one-year subscription to Tableau's interactive, self-paced, web-based training. There are multiple paths to choose from, or you can just choose certain sections, or you can complete them all. So it'll be a one-year subscription. It'll be about $120 value, depending on which option you end up choosing. But we'll select one winner at the end of the meeting later, and we just ask that you tweet the hashtag Madison Tug and hashtag eLearn, or type the hashtag in your comments in the meeting chat for those of you that don't have Twitter. And we do ask that you must be registered and present at the drawing later to win.
Awesome. And this really is for those of you who may be newer to Tableau, or you want the opportunity to really dive into training. This e-learning is a great way for you to get a hold of some training at no cost to you. And so it's really, I think this is a great prize. So we're gonna move on to, I have to click this button about 3 times to get to the next slide. Not that you guys need to know that, but anyway, we're gonna move right now into our first speaker. Nicole, would you like to introduce?
Sure. For those of you who are interested, Rob's biography, I'll give you a little bit of information about him. Dr. Rob's career in the dairy industry is focused on the transformation of data into information, knowledge, and ultimately wisdom to facilitate making better business decisions. Following a career in production agriculture, Rob has worked at the Grande cheese company for the past 27 years, where he's currently the senior principal data scientist. The addition of Tableau to his toolbox 5 years ago enhanced his ability to communicate with data and visualizations. However, and an even more important resource has been the Tableau community. Rob is looking forward to both sharing and learning today at our tech meeting. We'll let Rob take over sharing his screen. And
all right, let me see if I can get this to work right. Hopefully you're seeing a big white circle that says Tableau dashboard containers in the middle of an orange background.
no, not yet, Rob.
Okay. Well, let me try the share screen thing again. Share screen. I want to share. Oh, I had to click on the share button too.
All right.
You know, technology, it's a new thing. Now do we see an orange background and a white circle?
Yep, you're good.
Oh, right, great. And we're not going to spend a lot of time in PowerPoint. We just want to talk a little bit today about dashboarding and containers. You know, containers are one of the things that in Tableau were kind of a mystery to me. And as I started to use them, they didn't work well, or at least Tableau didn't do what I thought it should do. And the real problem wasn't Tableau. The problem was me not knowing what I was doing. And over time, I've learned a little bit and wanted to pass some of that along and just talk about, you know, differences in dashboards, you know, control versus flexibility using containers or not containers, you know, floating versus tiling, and then briefly about device specific layouts. And that's really about enough of PowerPoint, because I hate watching PowerPoint presentations being given. So I'll step out of that. And now you should just be seeing Tableau Desktop. I've got a really simple dashboard here, and this is actually a dashboard template we use at Grande. It just has a logo and a title at the top, has a refresh date for the data, and then you're just a couple things thrown in here to help say, this is where you might want to start. And one thing you'll notice along the bottom is there are multiple dashboards here. This first one's labeled automatic. And I've just set the size of this, and we do this a lot, it's set to automatic. And one of the things this really helps with is it will resize to fit different screens. And because everything on here is tiled, it'll float with the screen. So if I clicked on device preview, I'm now seeing what it would look like on a desktop. I use the little arrows here. I can say, oh, here's what it would look like on a tablet. It would look really ugly on a phone. This is just not a great dashboard for a phone. There are two other dashboard templates we have at Grande. One's called Portrait and the other is Landscape. We still have reports where people say, oh, I like that, but I really need to email it to somebody who's going to print it. They need it printed. They need a hard copy. So what we've done is just created a template on an 8.5 by 11 inch, either portrait or landscape, again, using fixed size. You can choose whatever size paper you want. You can create custom sizes, key in anything you like here. One thing we've noticed is that if you have a dashboard and somebody's going to subscribe to it through Tableau server, when they subscribe, they can ask for a PDF to be attached to the email. If you're looking at a dashboard, and let's just grab something here. Here's a table, it has a scroll bar in it. So if this was sent to someone as a PDF, that PDF would have a scroll bar in it. However, it's a picture of a scroll bar and it's really non-functional. So one of the things that we found is if you make that dashboard size really, really long, it will actually generate a PDF that's really, really long and there won't be a scroll bar there. So just create a couple charts, and I use Superstore to do this. One is a line and bar chart. I had a table that we just looked at and a bar and bar chart. And then I start to throw those onto a dashboard and see what happens. So again, I really like using automatic sizing for a couple of reasons. One, for demos, it fills the screen so you don't have all that extra space in there. But if I just grab a couple things like these two charts and drag them onto a dashboard, Tableau is going to tile them on the dashboard, and they look halfway reasonable. One thing you'll notice is, there is a legend here which seems to match this chart. The legend for this chart doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We can get rid of that and actually put a meaningful legend in here, maybe the color legend, but things just aren't where I want them. I can grab things on the desktop and drag them around and try to make them fit in where they should go, and they just don't look right. Well, one of the things we have in Tableau is the ability to use containers to start to organize and manage where things fall onto desktops or onto dashboards, excuse me. So if I just open a new dashboard here again, and let's again create an automatic size, it'd be nice if I could set that as a default, and maybe I can if somebody knows how, let me know. So if I wanted to have those same two charts, again, a bar and line chart and a bar and bar chart, and put them on the dashboard, and maybe I want to make them independent. Right now they're sharing a filter. So if I take the year filter off here and put a filter for year back on, and I'm going to choose all of them, I now have different filters for my two different visualizations. So if I wanted to put those, say one, what do they go? They're one on the top and one on the bottom of a dashboard. If I look on the left, I see this vertical container. It looks like it has two things, one on top of another. If I drag that onto the dashboard, and one thing I do a lot of times when I'm designing things is I add a little bit of space around things. You can do that with padding. So I can add space inside and outside just so I can see what's going on. You can always remove this or change it later. And I also put a border around containers. We'll just put a nice bright orange border to match our orange theme today around the outside of the container. I can now see where that container is, even if it's not selected. If I select it, we see the blue line around the container. One of the first things I do with any container is I grab a blank and I throw it inside the container. And it just acts as a space holder. It's really nice to have a space holder. Now, if I drag my chart, I could put my chart in the container. I could grab my second chart and put that into the container too. So now I have two containers in the chart, blank space in between I can always get rid of. But I still don't have the ability to put the different legends and different filters where I want them. So if I just get rid of these charts, we'll just take everything out of the container. I want to have something so I can put a container inside a container. Maybe then I could put my legend and filters along with the chart and keep them all separate. And maybe I want them side by side. So again, I've got my blank in the container. I'm going to put a border around this new container, and let's just make this a nice green border so that it's something different. We're going to get done. We're going to have a dashboard here, which is really going to need a makeover Monday session because it's going to be ugly, but it's going to be functional. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my blank and I'm going to put a border around that just so we can see it. I stick border and we've got a blank. I now have space to put a second container in here. I'll put one that looks like that again. And we'll wrap this one in the same type of border. And maybe that border is going to be a little smaller, but that's okay. And we get the other one a green border, so we'll give that one a green border. One of the things you'll notice, if I click on an element on a dashboard, if it's another worksheet, if it's a blank, if it's a text box or an image, you'll see a gray border around it. If I double click on the grab handle, I'll move and open up the container that contains that. It's really handy to be able to navigate between different elements of the dashboard and containers. You can also do it over here on the layout tab. It's a little more confusing to me just because Tableau seems to nest so much stuff over here. I can't always keep track of where I am. And that's another reason I put borders around things, just so I can see them appearing. So now I've got this container up here on the top that I've outlined in green. And again, I'll throw a blank into it just so I know where I am. Grab our first dashboard, which is our chart. Oops, make that a little bigger so we can see it. Grab our first dashboard, a simple chart. And what Tableau has done is it's thrown my legend and my filter down here because it thinks that's where they should go. I'm going to grab one more container and put another container inside a container inside a container. And we'll make this a little narrower. And into that one, I'm going to, oops, where did it go? Again, if I put a line around it, we'll be able to see it. I'm going to drop a blank into that container just so it's easier to see things. Now I can take things. Okay. Got too many containers here. This is my blank inside my blue container. Make sure I have the right thing. And I just threw away my legend. So now I can take my filter. I'm going to drop the filter and the legend both inside that container. I can get rid of the blank because I really don't need it. And maybe I'd rather have the legend at the top. One of the other things that you'll notice here is I see a highlight over the all in 2016. And no matter where I seem to click, that highlight is there. If you publish the Tableau server, that highlight is going to show up in your published report. And it took me a while to figure this out. And I'm sure if I would have read, I would have found it. But if you click somewhere other than on an element, that little highlight goes away and now it won't show up on your published report as a default. We still have this blank in the middle, which is really easy to get rid of. And I can repeat the same steps down here by dragging on another, let's see, first we want a horizontal, so I put things side by side. So if I put a horizontal container there, give it some kind of a border so we can see it. And inside that, I was going to put a blank. I'm going to grab my other chart. Did I not put the blank inside the container? Like inside the container. Nope, I must not have put it where I thought I put it. Oh, just container's a lot smaller than I thought it was. And just like we did up above, I'm going to grab a vertical container and put it in with the others. My handy blank inside the vertical container. And again, we have legend up here that I really don't want. Because I wasn't showing the filters and legend on this dashboard, they don't show up, but I can easily grab them. I want to grab my color legend. Tableau likes to put it up with the others, but I really want it down here in this container we just created. Where is the container we created? There's a blank. This is in the container we created. That's in the container we created. So there's the blank inside the container. So I can grab this and drag it in there with the blank. And I also wanted to see the filter for this and let my users know that, these are all associated with this dashboard. So I was filtering on, I think it's at the bottom of my screen resolution. Yep, there it is. Things don't always show up the way they should. I can get rid of the blanks. Oops. Look down here to get rid of that thing. Make things about the same width to get rid of the blank in the middle. One other nice feature here is I can come up as I drill out and get to my largest container, I can spread things out here and I can distribute them evenly within the container, distribute contents evenly. Now I have two like-sized elements. No really easy way to do that with things that are inside the containers, but you can drag them, move them over, drop, make them look like they're about the right size. And I actually want to grab the container, not element. Now I got to get rid of this blank because I made the blank too big. No, I'm not sure why I can't resize that, but I must have it set as fixed, which is not a big deal. But one of the things is just help my users see visually, and maybe we want to get rid of the border around this one. So now as my users look at this dashboard, it's got ugly lines around things, but they can tell inside this container outlined in green that this filter works well with this visualization, whereas this filter is controlling the other visualization. So one of the things that I find most useful with containers is, as I'm trying to start doing things, is I try to lay out really on a piece of paper, how do I want things to look on the dashboard, and then draw lines and boxes around them so I can determine what kind of containers do I need and how do they relate to each other. The other thing that's really nice as you start to do things with containers is it'll keep these together. So if we go back to device preview, we're seeing a default device here. If we go to a desktop, Tableau is showing us this is how it's going to look on a desktop. On a tablet, things will shrink up, but they still remain aligned because all these elements are within the same container. And as we switch to phone, we see something really interesting that Tableau says, I know what to do. People on phones don't like to scroll horizontally. It's much easier to scroll vertically with your thumb than it is horizontally. So Tableau has taken these containers and aligned one below the other, really switched the orientation, but it's still kept everything inside the container together. So containers are just a really handy way to pull things together and let Tableau do a lot of the work of aligning things. The only time I don't tend to use containers is when I have a report that has to be laid out in a very specific way. We did one recently with a packaging slip, which had to fit exactly on an 8.5 by 11 inch paper, have different elements in certain spots because it was going to hit an OCR later in its life. So we aligned things exactly where they need to go and floated them on dashboards. But otherwise, using containers and putting things on dashboard tiling really has a lot of value. And I think I can turn things back over for the rest of the meeting. And if we have questions, we can hit those later on, either before or during a breakout session. Thank you.
That was great, Rob. Thank you. We did have one question in the chat I want to draw forward right now, which is from Tally asking any tips on whether to use automatic sizing or custom sizing when publishing to accommodate various devices. And I don't know how we're doing on time, whether we should answer now or move on.
Looks like we got 1:16. I tend to use automatic. And one of the things that, as I just showed a second ago, it really helps as you try to pull into different screens. And one of the things you can do within Tableau Desktop, along with the device preview, there's also an option that lets you design for different devices. So if, as you're designing a dashboard, you say, this looks great on my screen sitting on my desktop. What's it going to look like on a tablet? It looks great there. It goes to a phone. You say, that just isn't right. You can create a second version of that dashboard that is specific to phones. And then when the user is using a phone and they see that dashboard, it will be formatted for their phone. Maybe that'd be a great session for somebody to do in a future session show. How do you set up dashboards with multiple devices so that they display appropriately on each different device?
Sarah, you're on mute. Okay, I'm going to take over for Sarah. I think we've lost sound. Our next session is new features in Tableau with Jen Shepard and Brad Darwin. And just to introduce them both, Jen Shepard has been into data viz since 2014, applying visualization best practices, as well as creativity in the nonprofit, for-profit, and government sectors. She has a PhD in social psychology and enjoys helping organizations collect, analyze, understand, and especially use their data. She's currently a contractor with the Wisconsin Department of Children and Families, DCF, as a Tableau specialist, building data visualizations and interactive data dashboards for internal and external audiences. DCF uses the dashboards to regularly monitor key performance indicators across all of its divisions, including metrics related to human resources, business intelligence, finance, child welfare, child care, child support, and early childhood education, among others. Jen is on the leadership team of the Madison Tug, where she motivates others to volunteer and hashtag do good with data. Brad's bio here. Brad Darwin's been involved with analytics since 2015. Beginning with a desire to win a fantasy football league, Brad has consistently enjoyed visual representations of data. I'm with you, Brad. Brad is certified in Tableau Desktop Intermediate in 2017 and continues to be a leader in Tableau at CUNA Mutual Group today. Currently, he supports 4 unique business areas at CUNA for operational reporting. Many of the metrics reported include cases, tasks, calls, and voice of customer surveys. While at CUNA, Brad has pioneered implementing some of the many data connectors Tableau offers, including directly connecting to Salesforce. Brad is on the leadership team for the Madison Tug and stays involved with hashtag do good with data projects also. And from there, we'll let we'll let Jen and Brad take over from here.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Nicole? I'm having a lot of audio or connection problems here.
I can hear you, but a little echoey.
Okay. Well, I just got dropped 3 times in a row, so everyone bear with us. Hopefully this will work and we can get through this presentation, but if not, we'll just blend the leprechauns, as Sarah Weber put it earlier. So hi, everybody. Brad, you want to switch to the next slide there?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm Jen Shepard. Thanks for the intro, Nicole. And Brad and I are going to tag team this presentation. We're going to be talking about some features that have come out in the last few releases of Tableau, roughly anything in the 2020 series, the last 4 releases. So we're going to go through a few of them in PowerPoint, and then we'll also do 2 demos for you. Again, technology cooperation pending for you in Tableau. So specifically, we're going to cover a couple of things like spatial file unions, a new operator, some exporting. So you can see the list here of the things that we're going to talk about. And then the demos that we have planned are looking at dynamic parameters. Oh my gosh, that had to have been the most requested feature ever in Tableau's idea log. And it took them, I think, 8 years, but they finally did it and we all love it. And then also a little bit about some improvements to forecasting. And then we'll just draw your attention to a couple of things that we know is on Tableau's roadmap for the near future. So first, let's talk about spatial file unions. So those of you who do mapping and do advanced mapping, you're not just looking at latitude and longitude coordinates, but actually have spatial files with boundaries. This is pretty exciting that this got released, because what it allows you to do is union multiple files together so that you can look at your geographical data in a new way. So a couple of examples of this are maybe looking at the same geographical area, but over different points in time. So one example of that that's on the Tableau's website is actually looking at the predicted path of a hurricane and seeing how that forecast changes as new information comes in from the Weather Service, actually looking at where those boundaries change. Another way you could do this is looking at a geographical area that the boundaries themselves have changed. So one example of this might be the example I have on the slide here for me in the Department of Children and Families. We might be looking at where child care centers are opening or closing. Sorry, that's more of a point in time example. So that's one example of how you could use this, looking at where things have opened and closed over time. But you could also use it for places where boundaries have changed, like maybe in voting wards where the district lines have been redrawn over time. So you could actually see that geographically in Tableau and just put those files all together and show those. So that's really great. All right, next. All right, in operator. So this doesn't really, sorry, back up one more. There you go. This doesn't really add new functionality. It's just a different way to do something that we were previously had to do through case statements or if statements. So the example I have here is looking at a string field where we're wanting to categorize these states as something else. So you could do this with the grouping function in Tableau, where you make a group and you click the ones that you want. You could do it that way. You could do the case statement, you could do the if statement, but what the in statement lets you do is put all of that on one line. And I actually used this at work just a couple of weeks ago because we wanted to categorize 44 different job titles together. They all were doing similar type of work as supervisors. And if I had had to write all 44 of those out in a case statement or an if statement, I could have done it, but I was able to use the concatenate function in Excel to output it all onto one row with the commas and the quotation marks and everything. And then I just pasted that entire string into Tableau, and boom, I basically had my calculation already done. It was fabulous. So this can save you some typing, can save you some time. And it doesn't just work for strings. It also works for dates, numbers, combined fields, and Boolean. So I did want to point out a couple of syntax notes here. If you are using this with dates, where you're saying, if my order date on the left here is in one of these specific dates, you do have to wrap those dates in these pound signs. So that's something to take note of. And then you can also use it for combined fields, but you have to make sure you put those brackets around the combined element so that Tableau sees that as a combined unit, a set, if you will. So a couple of syntax notes for you there. And then next slide, if you're doing this with numbers, it works the same way as with string. You just kind of list them out with the commas. And one use case I thought of this might be if you do something like randomly assign everybody a number, and then you want to just pick a couple of those, maybe the last digit or something, to decide who's going to be in a group together or who's the winner of your contest, for example, you can use the in statement for this. So again, one thing that you couldn't do before with case or if, or even just use the grouping, but it can save you a lot of time if you're trying to put a bunch of stuff together. And if you're a SQL user, you might already be used to the syntax and might prefer it just from a familiarity standpoint. All right, next.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. So last year, Tableau introduced a really handy feature for exporting, for users to be able to export their data. So you can now add within your dashboard an easy button, either a text or image button that'll easily export to crosstab, to image, to PDF, or even to PowerPoint. We've shown some handy icons there on the right. I know we come across a lot of use cases where people want it in Excel format, but all of these are definitely some highly used applications of it. Some other changes were made to web authoring. It's really nice. So end users can now edit maps, the layers, the backgrounds, and the formatting, and add pages shelf animation directly from the web. The Viz and tooltip capability, that was huge. And the ability to edit, yeah, right, finally, the ability to edit tooltips directly from the web as well. Highlight actions and mark labels. They can now create extracts and fixed sets. And finally, they can apply the work filters to specific worksheets, all directly from the web.
Finally, I confess I added those exclamation marks here because even though I do most of my development in desktop, I do sometimes have a workbook that I've already published and I'll notice, oh yeah, I just want to change this word in the tooltip. And for years, you couldn't do that. You had to open it up in desktop again, republish it. It was a real pain. Also, I work with some people who only have web authoring. So that'll be one of our breakout session topics later if you guys are also in this situation where web authors weren't able to do a lot of the things that desktop users could. And Tableau is really making an effort to make those more similar to each other. So every release, it seems like they add great stuff that web authors can do. And I have to say the edit tooltips was the biggest one for us, just finally that was available.
Yeah, super excited for those. Awesome.
All right, so next I wanted to draw your attention to some features that came out recently, but those didn't really get much press. These are not the big changes that Tableau made, so they don't necessarily make a big deal out of them. And I haven't even really seen people mention them too much in their blogs and things. And the big features tend to get a lot of attention. People will do demo videos, which are really helpful. We're going to share this slide deck with you all afterward. And I do have a lot of links at the bottom that you can look into these in a little more detail. But these features I find more day-to-day useful, but like I said, just don't necessarily get a lot of publicity. So you may not even have realized that these showed up. So one of them I use a lot because I'm also a containers user, Dr. Rob. I'm a tiled layout container junkie. I use lots of containers. But before, you would just have this big stack of things in your hierarchy that just says horizontal, vertical, horizontal, vertical. Not really helpful for figuring out which one you wanted to get to. But now all you have to do is right-click on any object in the hierarchy on the dashboard pane, and you can rename it on the spot. So I definitely use this for my containers, especially the ones where I put my filters. I tend to do the show hide container often, and then I will name that filters. I also use this if I use navigation buttons. So instead of just the generic button, I'll actually say, go to home or Berlin or whatever it might be. So I use this one a lot. Next one is reference lines. So for a long time, oh, sorry, same slide. Oh, back. There you go. So the bottom one on this page, reference lines. So previously, if you used a reference line in your biz, you were just stuck with whatever reference line text Tableau decided to add into the tooltip. And for a lot of the reference lines that I use, it's for performance metrics. And the line itself is labeled with what that value is. So it might be our target goal of 90% or something. So there was no need for the reference line to show that information as well. And in recent releases, Tableau's actually given you the ability to edit that text to say whatever you want, or you can just do what we usually do and turn the tooltips off entirely. Okay, now next, thanks, Brad. Another feature they put in there is really handy if you have a really cluttered workbook with a whole lot of stuff, and maybe you can't quite remember where you put a particular worksheet. You can now right-click on the sheet tab at the very bottom, and it will tell you where you've used it. And not only that, if you then actually click on it, so in this screenshot here, you see dashboard 1. If you clicked on that, it would actually open up dashboard 1. So you can navigate to where the sheet is, as well as find out where it's used. So that's pretty helpful. And then the bottom example here, nested sorting used to be kind of a pain. So in this example, we're looking at sorting sales from highest to lowest in states, but then also grouping those by region. And we wanted that to re-sort every time we sorted a new region. And that used to be more complicated to do, but now it's right there in the sorting dialog box. All you have to do is select nested, and it will take both of those things into account for you. All right, next. 2 more for you here. So I love this swapping sheets. I don't know exactly what version this came out in, but it's been a couple of them now, and I use this one all the time. So if you have something already on a dashboard, and then you decide, you know what, I actually want this other thing to be here as well. Maybe you're just learning how to use containers, and you put something in a spot that you don't love it being. Yeah, you can delete it and bring in the new sheet, but I find it easier to use this swap sheets function. So all you do is you click on the sheet in the dashboard dialog box, and then hover over the sheet that you want to swap in for it, and you see this little curved arrow icon. If you click that, it will replace, in this case, sheet A with sheet B. It just does that automatically for you. It's wonderful. So if you haven't found that yet or haven't used it, I can almost guarantee at some point you'll find a use for it. And then the last one I have for you here, this just came out in 2020.4. Before, when you wanted to have comments in your calculations, which is a best practice, just so that you can explain to your future self or to a coworker what this calculation does, you used to have to use that double slash for every line of your comment. But now they've introduced the ability to use this block commenting, where you just bookend your text with the */ and then end it with /*. And you can have as many lines of text as you want. It'll make all of it a comment at the same time instead of having to repeat those double slashes everywhere. So pretty awesome feature there too. Over to you, Brad.
Awesome. Next up, we have animations. So animations, huge addition for Tableau. Use cases range from analysis, presentation, or even some data storytelling. And you compare them with, the pages shelf for seamless transitions over time. Using them to see and understand how your dimensions reorganize after a sort. And you can even guide your audience and their attention towards the presentation and throughout it to help them focus maybe on certain things that matter. And we've got a demo here, example, with some really cool baseball data, home run charts. Thought this was fitting with opening day coming next month. So.
Yeah, I have to say, this is the first time I had seen a line chart race. Most people are using animations for the bar chart races, which are pretty fun. If you want to see more examples, you can just Google Tableau bar chart race and you'll see plenty. But this is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Bruce let it there for a while. And buffer calculations. This was another really cool one. Allows you to do further analysis of the data within that buffer. So there are boundaries around a point that you can use to spatially kind of aggregate that data. And most importantly, they can function and be used in a spatial join. So you can now join two non-spatial data sources like Excel or CSV files based on a distance. And that removes the extra steps of needing to kind of work around and mix questions like how many competitive stores are within a 1 mile radius of my store an easier question to answer. Awesome. And multiple map layers. So now you can drag your dimensions directly onto the viz. It'll give you a separate map layer kind of button and allows you to add an unlimited number of layers directly to the map. And this means you can visualize multiple sets of location data in context of the other ones. There's no need for separate tools to try and combine that ahead of time.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say that example that just showed up on the screen, that's from Adam McCann. So the video we have as a resource here shows how he built that. I think he's got something like 8 or 10 different layers he used to build this custom map of a local park. Pretty awesome. So yeah, that is actually built in Tableau. All right, so now we're to the demo portion. So I'm going to talk or show you a little bit about this new feature that just came out in 2020.4, where you can extend your date range, or as I call it, showing some future dates. So it doesn't work for everything, but it's useful for some of the table calculations and also if you're doing predictive modeling. This is just a brief demo, so we'll certainly not be talking a lot about predictive modeling, just more of how the future date part works. So hopefully Zoom will cooperate with me here and let me share my screen with you. Everybody cross your fingers. And Brad, if you can just give me a confirmation that you're seeing my screen.
Yep, I can see it.
Awesome. All right, so let's imagine we have just this basic scenario where we're looking at sum of sales by region over time. So currently what you can do is add a forecast to this. So all you have to do is just drag out forecasts from the analytics pane, and Tableau will do that for you. So it's considering a bunch of different models, picking the best one based on your data, and it gives you this forecasted area at the end. And you can change how much time is included here. So you can have able to do that for quite a while. But where this falls down a little bit is if your measure isn't something straightforward like sum of sales, and maybe instead you're interested in looking at a moving average of your sales. So in that case, if I were to change this, if I had just sum of sales and I wanted to change that to a moving average with a quick table calculation, then when I go to my analytics pane, forecast is no longer available. So you're out of luck. But now with this new date extension, you can use that extender part on a table calculation. So what I can do instead is if I go up to my date pill, there's this new option in here called extend date range. And now I can add more time to my order date, even though it's not actually in my data. So let's just go ahead and plop 3 months in here. So I don't know if you noticed that, but I did only have data through December of 2020, and now I added a couple more months here onto the end. And immediately you see that I have this null problem, and that's because of how the moving average is being calculated. It's only considering 2 months at a time. So when I said give me 3 new months, there's one time period that it can't account for. But if I just edit my table calculation to have it consider the previous 3, then it's using the last 3 points in my actual data and using that to predict the next 3. So that works out pretty well. Definitely analysts beware of how you use this feature, and that you don't want it to start extrapolating so far out that it's really not meaningful and not a good model. So again, we can't talk too much about that in this meeting. I just wanted to show you how that works. So I've extended my data by a couple of months. One thing you might notice right away is there's absolutely nothing visually to indicate that I've done that. So if I didn't know that I had done that, and if somebody else were opening this up, there's nothing to tell them that this is a prediction. Unlike with the forecast, where it's very clear that this is different than the main line, that doesn't happen in the moving average. I'm sorry, with the extending date. So be a little cautious with that as well. And then the other place I've seen people starting to use this feature is actually using the modeling calculations that Tableau has. So in the deck, there's a link to Tableau Tim's video on this, which I highly recommend. And he talks about using this calculation to predict to model the quantiles of your data. So basically saying, in this case, where's the 50% point of my data? And you can use this new feature on those models as well. So here it's just showing the model for each region for the dates for which I actually have data. And again, all I have to do is go up here and extend that date range out, and it's going to extend that model out a little bit too. So some cool stuff if you're really into modeling and predictive stuff. So just wanted you guys to be aware that that's a thing now. And I will turn it back to you, Brad.
All right, awesome. And can you see my screen again?
Yes, I do.
Awesome, thank you. And next we have dynamic parameters. We're going to do a simple demo of where the tool will recognize the new field entered in. So here we have a simple chart showing categories and number of orders over time. We're using a Superstore data set that we've exported to a CSV. And here's the CSV. We're going to go add a new field, new entry at the bottom. Click out of that. And open dashboard 1 second. And when we open it, we should see the parameter that we had. We'll add the new field. We'll recognize the new field. Awesome. And our highlight parameter now shows all 4 categories, whereas before it only had the 3. Yeah. Huge for especially date parameters when you have new date entries coming into your data set regularly and you don't want to have to go back in and have it recognize those. It'll do it now automatically for you.
That is so
Awesome.
spiffy.
And we've got showing the max date that you can kind of set it to, but now in 2020.4, it will actually do the max date for you for that field. So you can avoid the LOD.
Not min date though.
Not min date. Yeah. And finally, we'll wrap up with a few coming soon items. So quick LODs. So soon you'll be able to drag and drop your data element to your viz and then be able to create a LOD kind of on the fly. Won't have to open up and edit your LOD. And many improvements to header and axis labels, avoiding overlapping, and you'll be able to now search within the HTML elements when you're pulling up a viz and do like search on your browser for items within that viz. So we're really excited for a lot of those.
Yeah, every version, they have really cool stuff. So when we switch to breakout rooms, Brad and I are going to be in a room that's going to be called Tips and Tricks. So this presentation was more about new features, but we'd love to hear from you. If you guys have a tip, maybe it's a recent feature, maybe it's just something you love to share with us, that would be great. Come join that breakout room and share with the whole group. We also have a few other tips and tricks that we'll be sharing as well. And that's it for us. Back to you, Sarah and Nicole.
Thank you, Brad and Jen, for that very, very informative session. I know I always come back to these and I find so much that I that I come back and I use. So we're going to take just a quick second and walk through the breakout sessions that are going to be available to us when we open them up in just a few moments. Today's breakout sessions are going to be hosted by various members of the TUG leadership team, pretty much everyone you've heard speaking today, and as well as myself and Nicole. So Brad and Jen, we just heard from Jen talking about what their breakout session is going to be about. Rob, would you like to give us a quick overview? Do you have a slide that you want to share on your breakout, or are we good to stay here?
I think I'm good just to talk, and we'll get to the slide when we get there. Ben Hendrick is going to be joining me. Ben is one of our analytics engineers, also manages our Tableau server installation and is managing the process to move to Tableau online. We're going to talk about the process we're going through and some opportunities to improve user experience, consistency, security, and maintenance that we're taking advantage of as we move to Tableau online. And as we've been presenting this to users within Grande, there's just been a huge amount of excitement. And one of the biggest wins we're going to have for people in the field, those that service our dairy farms and that service restaurants on the cheese sales end, is that they will not need a VPN connection to get to our Tableau online instance. And that's just a huge win for people who are out in the field every day. And Ben will be here to tell us all about it.
Great, thanks, Rob. Sarah Weber, if you have a few words that you can tell us about what what we're gonna see in our breakout session for desktop and web edit.
Yeah, you bet. Hi, everyone. Sarah Weber on the TUG leadership team, also an American Family employee. We've talked about using web authoring for a really long time, and for many reasons over the past few years, we haven't really taken advantage of it. But as you heard about in the new features, it's really come a long way, and we're taking a much closer look. Maybe some of you and your companies are feeling the same way and thinking about the pros and cons and how you should go about maybe enabling the feature in your environment. Maybe you're an experienced web author and you've got some awesome tips and tricks you can share with those of us in the breakout session, or maybe you just want to learn a little bit more about the topic. So you should definitely join us. No matter why you're there, I think it'll be a good one for you. I'm going to share just a few things about what I think I know about web authoring, some of the pros and cons, but then we're going to really just talk as a group and learn from one another. We're thinking about having a session at a future meeting that really delves a little bit deeper and does a presentation format. So this discussion will help inform what you want to know, what you already know, and things like that. So I will see you in the breakout.
Thank you. And our fourth and final breakout room is going to be a Tableau Doctor session. For those of you who are planning to head into the different breakout rooms, when we open them up, each of them has a name. And so you will be able to find the breakout room you'd like to attend by the name of it. So we've got a tips and tricks, a cloud migration, desktop versus web edit. If you are planning to join the Tableau Doctor session, please come and visit us in Tableau Doctor 1. There is a second overflow Tableau Doctor room, but that's not going to be staffed initially, and unless or until we have reason to use it. So at this point in time, I'm going to step through this very fancy Tableau Doctor slide. And Nicole, if you'd like to take just a second, we are going to talk through our closing, some of our closing elements. We're going to pass through our giveaway, and the final activity for this afternoon will be the breakout rooms, which will open, and then there will be no expectation of coming back here once we've done that. So Nicole, go ahead.
Virtual meeting, that'll be April 21st. Then the Milwaukee TUG will be meeting Thursday, May 20th. Just to keep an eye out on what's coming up. And then I'm going to ask Pat to join us here. He's going to have the e-learning drawing and he'll announce who the winner is.
Thanks, Nicole. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I do have some new information about the April 21st Wisconsin TUG virtual meeting. And that is, the topic is advanced analytics, and we're planning to have the product manager for Einstein Analytics join us and share some of the most recent Einstein Analytics Tableau integrations that are just coming out in 2021.1. So not here yet, but should be there by April 21st, and we're going to give you an initial look at that. So pretty excited about that. And also on that topic, if you are doing some interesting advanced analytics with Tableau and are up for sharing what you're doing, we would love to feature your presentation as well. So just ping me if you're interested in sharing some of your advanced analytics work. Yeah, we've got an e-learning drawing and announcement of the winner now. And I'm pleased to announce that Miles Holvik is the winner. And I'll be reaching out to you, Miles, with your e-learning certificate. Congratulations, and let us know what you think about the e-learning giveaway. Back to you, Nicole.
Thanks, Pat. Lastly, we're just going to share with you how to stay connected with us. So we've got some contact information for the Madison Tug, the Milwaukee Tug, and the Wisconsin Tug. All this information will be available on, we will be posting a recording of today's meeting and these slide decks. Sarah's got a link out there, but we'll get that information out to you. If you sign up for the meeting, you will get an email as to find this information as well. But that's it. From here, we're going to start the breakout rooms, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. And so the way this will work is I'll open the breakout rooms. You will have, again, the opportunity to join based on the name of the room. Feel free to jump into any room that you want to participate in. If you want to move between rooms, you can leave the breakout room and it'll take you back to the main room, and you should be able to join a second breakout room at that time. We will not be actively monitoring the main room. So if you find that you need some assistance, Nicole and I are the meeting hosts, and we'll be in Tableau Dr. One if you need to like poke us and chat and say, hey, can you ask if you want me to put you into a different room? I should be able to do that too. So thank you again, everyone. It's been a real pleasure to have you today. Enjoy the breakout sessions.